Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Friday, September 5th, 2025, and on Fridays we talk about human behavior and justifications. And so this week on the Dr. J Vlog series, we've been talking about resilience. We all know that life doesn't unfold necessarily in a very straight line without any complications, but rather there are the occasional twists and turns and everything from the everyday challenges that we're confronted with, the possibly unexpected demands that might come our way, to, of course, the more traumatic events that can have a more lasting impact, like the death of a loved one, a life-altering accident, or a serious illness. And each change affects people differently, bringing a unique flood of thoughts and strong emotions and uncertainty. And yet, people generally adapt quite well to the life-changing situations that they confront, in part thanks to their resilience. So according to the American Psychological Association, the APA, they define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. And as much as resilience involves bouncing back, it can also facilitate some rather profound personal growth. So while adverse events can certainly be painful and difficult at times, they don't have to determine your life's outcome. There's much that you can control and modify, even grow with along the way. And that's resilience. So becoming more resilient helps you get through the difficult situations, and it empowers you to grow and even improve your life along the way. But much like building up your cardio or your muscles, increasing your resilience takes time and effort and intentionality. So the APA recommends focusing on four core components: connections, wellness, healthy thinking, and meaning. And I entirely agree. So collectively, these can empower you then to withstand and learn from the difficult or traumatic experiences you might have along the way. So to increase your capacity for resilience, to weather and to grow from the difficulties, you can consider then doing several of the following strategies. So first, in terms of connections, you'll want to try to prioritize key relationships. That is to say, for example, connecting with empathetic and understanding people can remind you that you're not alone when you face the tough times. Focus then, of course, on finding trustworthy and compassionate individuals who can validate your feelings and who can empathize with what you're going through to some degree. The problem is that the pain of traumatic events can sometimes lead people to want to withdraw from social connections, to isolate themselves. And for most people, that's kind of the worst thing you can do. Not in every case, but most cases. But it's important then to accept help and support from people who care about you. As a second possibility, you could join a group. Along with one-to-one relationships, some people find that being active in civic groups, faith-based communities, or other kinds of local organizations can provide social support and help you again to sort of reclaim your hope and your focus. In addition, you'll want to foster wellness and take care of your body. Self-care is often, it's a popular buzzword, but it's really a legitimate practice for maintaining mental health and enhancing resilience. Because stress is just as much physical as it is emotional. So we want to take care of ourselves. And promoting a positive lifestyle includes, as I talked about earlier this week as well, proper nutrition, trying to get ample sleep, staying hydrated, and of course, continuing to exercise your body so that you can adapt to stress and reduce the toll of emotions like anxiety and depression, because we're all going to experience them to varying degrees. And what you want to do is minimize the adverse impacts along the way. You will also want to try to practice mindfulness, mindful journaling, yoga, and other spiritual practices like prayer or meditation can also help people build connections and restore hope, which can then prime them to deal with situations that require resilience. When you journal or meditate or pray, ruminate then on the positive aspects of your life and recall the things that you're grateful for, even during the periods of difficulty and personal trials that you're going to encounter. Also, you'll want to avoid the negative outlets. It may be tempting, to mask your pain with drugs or alcohol, for example, but that's like putting a bandage on a deep wound. And focus instead on giving your body the resources then to manage the stress more effectively, rather than seeking to eliminate or mask the feelings altogether. Moreover, and ultimately, one of the biggest things that you can do is try to reclaim your purpose or find your purpose in life. And you can often do that by helping others. That is to say, whether you volunteer for a local homeless shelter or simply support a friend in need. That's an important form of helping. But in doing these things and in reaching out, you'll typically garner and reclaim a sense of purpose, as well as foster your own self-worth, connect with other people, which I've mentioned also is incredibly important, and tangibly help others, all of which then empowers you to grow in terms of your resilience. So be selfish, help others, and then be proactive. It's helpful to acknowledge and accept your emotions during your struggles, but also ask yourself, what can I do about a problem in my life? Do a bit of a cognitive assessment, strengths and weaknesses or options, boarding on the wall or on a paper on your computer. And if the problems seem too big to tackle, what you want to do is break them down into more manageable chunks, pieces. So, for example, if you got laid off at work, you might not be able to convince others that it was a mistake to let you go. In fact, that almost never happens. And don't try the George Costanza thing where you just show up at work the next week and pretend that nothing happened. But instead, what you can do is spend some time, maybe an hour even each day, developing your strengths and working and identifying what you're really good at, enhancing your resume, upgrading it, and taking the initiative to do things that you know will in the longer term help make you a more presentable, a more valuable employee, and just a better person in general. All of that's going to just help you over the long term. So again, it's tough when you just get laid off, but you don't want to wallow in your misery either. So again, be proactive. And then always continue to work towards your goals. Develop realistic goals and do something regularly, even if it seems like a small accomplishment, because that enables you to begin to move forward with the things that you really want to accomplish. And then you also build good, healthy habits along the way. So instead of focusing on stuff that's completely out of the realm of possibility or unachievable, maybe ask yourself, what's the one thing that I can actually accomplish today that's going to help me move in the direction that I'd like to go? So, for example, if you're struggling with the loss of a loved one and you want to move forward, you could join a support group, or a grief counseling support group, or what have you, in your area, and that might be an active step that can help promote your own recovery. And also at the same time, look for opportunities for self-discovery as you go through the difficulties. People often find that they grow in some respects after they've experienced a particularly profound struggle. So for example, after a tragedy or a hardship, people have reported often having better relationships and a greater sense of strength, if you will, even though they were feeling vulnerable and hurt or devastated by preceding events. And then, of course, along with that, you need to try to embrace healthier thoughts and try to keep things in perspective, because how you think about things plays a huge part in determining how you feel and how resilient you'll end up being in the face of obstacles. So try to identify any areas of irrational thinking, the tendency, for example, to catastrophize difficulties or assume that the world is out to get you, or that there's no hope, and instead try to adapt a more balanced and positive and realistic thinking pattern. In addition, do your best to accept change, which of course is an inevitable part of life. Certain goals or ideals may no longer be attainable, for example, because of your adverse circumstances or what's happened to you, or your life stage or your age or whatever the condition might be. So accepting circumstances that you cannot change can also, of course, help you then to refocus your efforts and energies on the things that you can change and can control. it's hard to be positive, obviously, when life isn't going your way, but work towards developing that more optimistic outlook nonetheless. Try to visualize what it is that you want, and then try to focus your energies there rather than on being consumed by the fears and the anxieties and the worries about what you feel like you can't do. And then try to learn from your past too. That is to say, by looking back at who or what was helpful in previous times of trouble and distress, you can discover sometimes maybe that you're more able to respond effectively under this or that condition, or when you reached out and connected with this or that person. So again, identify, learn from your past and what's worked and worked particularly well, and of course try to avoid that which hasn't worked in the past. And no matter what, remember that as long as you have the ability to think and feel and breathe, you can still turn things around. So think of the worst day that you've ever had in your entire life, day you never want to repeat. And remember that somehow you survived that horrible day, whatever it was. And you've had many good ones after that as well. So again, remember that you have, by definition, survived the worst day in your life. And of course, you can do that again if need be. I wouldn't wish tragedy to befall anyone, but life has a funny way of throwing those occasional curveballs in our direction. And we know that as great as things might be today or at this given moment, there's going to be some challenges down the road too, inevitably, that we're going to have to confront. So, as ever, to help you with your own resilience, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. And in the end, the love and the good vibrations you share will bounce back, and you'll feel them tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. And by speaking of tomorrow, I hope I'll see you then. Take care.